August 29th. We got up at 9:30 a.m. after a very sleep and had breakfast at 10:30 a.m. We were going through the thick of Washington at 11 a.m. We went through the Naval Academy at Annapolis at 1:30 p.m. At Baltimore, we saw Fort McHenry, where Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. In a gas station at Baltimore, we stopped for water and a Coke. While there, we heard a loud crash of thunder, and all of a sudden, we had rain. After 6 days of 100 degrees or more, it finally rained. The storm lasted for about 5 minutes. Anyhow, it cooled things off. In the bay at Baltimore, we saw a little white heron-like bird which appeared to be slightly smaller than a great blue. However, we were driving by and it was hard to tell. While visiting Fort McHenry, we're not allowed to go inside since we were wearing shorts, and Dave was without a shirt. We entered Delaware at 5:30 p.m. At 6:30 p.m., we entered Pennsylvania. We stopped at Chester, Pennsylvania, the second oldest settlement in Pennsylvania, for some groceries. Being about time to eat, we looked for a place to camp. We found a park, but we were not allowed to stay there. However, we were directed to another place, so we headed for there immediately. After scouting around for a long time, we came to the conclusion we were on the wrong road. We stopped at a house along the way and asked if there was any camping spots around there. Before we knew it, we were cooking our meal on their stove and then pitching our tent in their back lawn. We went to bed about 11 p.m. August 30th. We rose about 7:30 a.m. and washed in the Davis's house. She made us a good breakfast and we were headed towards Philly at 9:15. Arrived in Philadelphia at 9:45 a.m. First of all, we saw Convention Hall. Much to our dismay, the Franklin Institute main branch was closed. However, we did see the Academy of Naval Science and found it most interesting. It was somewhat like Washington's National History Museum. It had a complete display of birds all over the world. It also had animals mounted in the natural surroundings, also a display of minerals. At about 12:30, we went to the Central YMCA and had a swim and a shower. At 2:30, we had lunch right there at the Y. After lunch, we went to Independence Hall and saw the Liberty Bell. At 4:15 p.m., we went across the bridge of the Delaware River to Camden, New Jersey. At 8:30 p.m., we finally arrived at a place to sleep. It was a place called Union Beach, New Jersey. It was just a resort town, and consequently, every Tom, Dick, and Harry was on the street having fun. We cooked our meal on the beach, but lost our appetite with people standing around watching us. We procured permission to sleep on someone's lawn, but we had to wait till the town calmed down before turning in. We put our sleeping bags on the beach and went to sleep at 11. August 31st. At about 1:30 a.m., the tide came in and we were forced to move our sleeping bags back. We got up at 6:30 a.m. and took a slight dip in the ocean. We had breakfast and were on the road at 8 a.m. At about 9:30 a.m., we entered Newark and Jersey City. Then we crossed through the Holland Tunnel to New York at about 9:45 a.m. We went across the East River on the Williamsburg Bridge and got rooms at the YMCA. At this time, we found we had a flat tire. While this was being fixed, we had very good lunch at 11:30 a.m., after which we headed for the Statue of Liberty. But we didn't get there. We went back and forth around Manhattan Island and Brooklyn first, after pushing people around the streets and arriving at the ferry. For about 45 minutes, we looked for a place to park and finally gave up. From here, we went to the Empire State Building, but the same situation was here too. Since we couldn't park there, we looked at it anyway. At this time, we were very discouraged, so we went back to the Y and had a good swim and a shower. We had supper across the street and went back to the Empire State Building. Since parking was permissible after 6 p.m., we found a spot easily. We went to the lobby and found it would cost $1.20 to go to the top. Then we went outside, took one more look, and went back to the car. After this discouraging episode and others preceding, we weren't feeling so good when we struck out for Coney Island, the largest amusement park in the world. We parked the car and began walking around. We got the impression that it was a very large amusement park immediately. There were at least 2 or 4 roller coasters anyway, plus an assortment of novel rides and sorts of varieties for each kind. There were slideshows, penny arcades, food stands of all sorts, etc. All during the trip, we were looking forward to a ride on the roller coaster at Coney Island. However, we decided not to go on it until we got some pickups. So we looked and looked and we looked. Finally, we found 3 and followed them to the beach. Here we saw a display of beautiful fireworks. We finally got the girls to show us around, and we went right to the roller coaster. The girl I had got sick when she goes on these things, but we went anyway. It was the first for me. I nearly had fits. Following this, we went across the streets to the biggest roller coaster, which the girls did not take. My stomach went up and down with the hills, which were tremendous compared to the first one. They seemed taller and much more steep. There were some very sharp curves which nearly threw us out of the car. What got me were the 2 very drunk men in front of me who were not even holding on. This was their 4th ride I knew of, and kept telling me to relax. But it was the most I could to hold on for dear life. We had a drink and took the girls for a walk down the boardwalk. We took the girls home about 12 o'clock, finding them very nice. They lived in Brooklyn, near Delancey Street. They ranged from 18 to 22. Mine was 18 and very pretty. We got back to the Y at 12:30 a.m., had a snack, and went to our individual rooms at 1 a.m. September 1st, at 8 a.m., we got wakened up. We had agreed to meet in the lobby at 9 a.m. We started out directly for the Statue of Liberty. After much delay, we finally got to the Liberty Ferry at 11 a.m. The statue is made out of metal and it stands on a pedestal about 10 stories tall. The statue itself is about 23 stories or 230 feet. We climbed up and down it. The arm was closed. The statue was presented to the American people by the French people in honor of the 100th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence. It is carrying in its right hand the torch of freedom and on its left a copy of the Declaration. The story goes that Liberty just got free and the iron chains around her leg can be seen only from the torch. Bedloe Islands used to be Fort Wood until a statue was placed there. Now it is a national monument. When we came back, we took a shower and had lunch. We left Brooklyn about 3 p.m. The people here seemed kind and friendly, just like the Southerners we came across. There is a marked difference in people's attitude throughout the trip. On the way out of town, we saw Rockefeller Center, Radio City, and St. Patrick's Church. Consequently, though, we couldn't stop and go through them. While driving down Broadway, we suddenly heard a loud crash and scraping of metal. We stopped and found the whole back end had dropped off. We began picking up all the odds and ends that had dropped off, and people began gathering on the sidewalk. It just so happened that this occurred in front of a Cadillac old sales room right in the heart of New York. They brought wire out for us to fix it back with. We had to take all our food out and put it on the sidewalk. Finally, we were all fixed. A man came out from the sales room and asked if we'd accept $20 of gas. We were flabbergasted at first, but after much persuasion, we accepted $4. We stopped at Kingston for a supper. At 9:40 p.m., we stopped off a side road and laid our sleeping bags and went to sleep. September 2nd. We got up at 6 p.m. and hit the road at 7. We had a small breakfast on the way. Going through the Catskill Mountains Park, we found the mountains very tame compared with the Alleghenies, Appalachians, and the Blue Ridge Mountains. At Portlandsville, New York, near Richmond, we saw 4 American egrets, a yellow-bellied sapsucker, a mallard, cedar waxing, and a scarlet tanger. This was the first place so far that we had seen any abundance of birds at all. A little further on, we saw a large, whitish duck. The motor was sounding bad at 3:30, so we stopped to do some overhauling. Some of the hills here were just as bad as the mountains, since the roads go over the top instead of through the valleys. We cleaned the plugs and reset the gap, timed the motor, and refiled the points. When we tried to start the motor after this, it refused to go. After much debate, we thought we had it whittled down to the coil, so Dave went to Lafayette, New York, to get a new one. A mechanic soon came and towed us to town. We found the distributor was shorted. Within no time it was fixed and we were on the road again at 6:20 p.m. We stopped at Auburn for supper at 8 p.m. On the road again. The car would go a little and then kink out. This was narrowed down to the gas line, and with the aid of a man who had put 500,000 miles on a Model A, we found our troubles and were on the road again. We were determined to make Buffalo that night, so we drove and drove, etc. Buffalo or bust was our motto. We had wonderful luck. We drove over 100 miles without stopping except to change drivers. We needed no water. At 12:30 a.m. we had something to keep us awake, and after we averaged about 40 miles per hour. At 2:30 a.m. we arrived in Buffalo and found a good hotel, the Tudor Arms, and were in bed at 2 a.m. We had a broken exhaust pipe for the last 100 miles. September 3rd. After a very good sleep, we arose at 11:30 a.m. and checked out at 12:30 p.m. We had lunch just outside Buffalo, arrived in Niagara Falls at 2:45. We went directly to the falls. First we saw it from above, and then we went down 180 feet and saw it from below. We crossed the Rainbow Bridge to Canada at 4 p.m. At 5 p.m. we stopped somewhere in Canada to paint the names of the states we had been in on the car. We set as our destination for the day a town halfway between Niagara and Detroit, St. Thomas. At 6:10 we were in Dunningville. The old Timid soul was really percolating for this whole stretch. However, the ammeter was discharging. Just outside of St. Thomas, we stopped for repairs at 10:15 p.m. The people here were marveling at our trip, especially at the fact that we're still all sober. After a great deal of adjustment, we fixed it so it would run as well as it had when we stopped. While at this stopping place, a woman offered her garden for us to camp in. We graciously accepted. And when we were all set, we drove to her house and turned in under the stars. We were thinking we needed a new generator, and also knock in the motor had developed since the muffler had broken. We were hoping it would last the remaining distance. We were in bed at 11 p.m. after covering about 130 miles. September 4th. We got up at 6:30 a.m., packed up, and were on the road 20 minutes later. We were in St. Thomas at 7 a.m. Ever since the baggage broke off the back in New York, we'd been having trouble with it. In the present, it proved to be our biggest concern. At 9 a.m., we stopped at Chatham for breakfast. After this, we made good time with no stops to Windsor. We crossed the Ambassador Bridge at 11:30 a.m., and I was home at 12:10.